So again, today we are going to be covering the Miniproject1, starting over from scratch. So the first thing we need to do is, if we look in here, this project will be using the packages NumPy and Matplotlib in order to create 5 graphs that output as PNG files. That's the goal of this mini project. All right. So we need to start a new project. And anytime we're doing these mini projects, these all need to go on your GitHub account. All right. When you click on this link to submit your work, you are not submitting the PDF or the Python files or anything else. You are clicking on create submission and you are entering in the GitHub URL for your project. Okay. All right. So the first thing we need to do before we get started on this project, let's go back here, is go out to GitHub. Now you can create, let's see here, somebody's question. Spencer, you can't hear me. Can you hear me now, Spencer? My microphone's going up. So Spencer.
The construction upstairs?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it got really loud here. He's about to drill again.
Oh, amazing. Let's go. Drill with surprising comedic timing.
Yeah, it's exactly what we were talking about in the last class. Okay. So let's see here. We got this one.
I'm about to go all Lorax on these
I need
deforestators.
to log into my other account
Yeah, they're putting it down. There's like a
Okay.
positioning thing.
So sign in, get your name.
It's kind of like a family weekend. They stock it just for people that fit on it.
Okay, that's been sweet. I can.
Okay. So we need to create a new mini project over here, right? And you can see I already had one over here from last time. So
Is there like a naming convention we need to use for this?
yes,
Yeah,
there
very good.
definitely is. So first thing you do on these mini projects, go out to your GitHub, create a new repository, okay? For the repository name, if you go back to learning modules and you come down here, this is the structure I want you to use. All right, so mini project, whatever number, and then your initials after that. Okay, so I obviously already have one, so I'm going to trash that repository real quick. Give me just a second. Settings. There's a way to get rid of this here. It's been a while. At the very end. There we go. Delete the repository. Mini project 1, Jason.
We're creating a new repository, right?
Yes. All right. So we come in here, repositories, we want a new repository. And we would need to call it Mini Project 1 JZ. In this case is what my initials are. Please don't use my initials, use your initials. Going through there. Okay. On the description, you can leave that blank. On public or private, you need to set that to public. Okay. Click the checkbox for the README. Okay. On the Git Ignore, click the down tab and go for Python.
And so that is the Python git ignore template.
Yes.
It's like, oh, I know you need these files, so I'm going to kick out all the files that you don't need for a Python project.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
I didn't know if that was like it's going to ignore all the Python files.
No, what that does is anything that would be in Python that you wouldn't want to submit. So if you ever run a Python file, you end up with what's called a .pyc file, which is it compiled. And that way you can run that and execute that immediately. This makes sure that it doesn't include any of that.
Oh.
It also makes sure it doesn't add everything from your interpreter, like your Python packages and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So, and we're going to go in and edit that here in a little bit. On choose a license, you guys can leave this blank. If you were building out a real project, this is where you could assign whatever license you wanted, right? So if you wanted this, general public, you could correct GNU if you wanted it. There's different kinds of licensing for different structures. Each one of these means different things. So MIT is more accessible than, say, Apache by its license. All right. For the purpose of this class, we're just going to leave those as none. This will set your main branch as your default branch. That's fine. Go ahead and click on create repository. Okay. You'll notice that that created a repository with two files immediately. One's the get ignore and one's your readme. If we look at the readme, it just has the name of your project in here and that's it. All right. Now we click the drop down next to code and we're going to copy this URL that we have here for the HTTPS. All right. Now we fire up our PyCharm. There's two ways to create these repositories. You could do it this way or you could do it within PyCharm. I encourage you to start this way first, then load that into PyCharm. So that's the direction we're going to go. The key there is making sure that you get your get ignore and readme, which again, you can do it in PyCharm, but this is a much better process. So hopefully PyCharm loads here. Should be loading. Let's try that again. PyCharm. All right. Maybe. I guess. Evidently PyCharm's like, not today. You were already in here once today. We're good.
You get one views per day. What does need update?
I was trying to update evidently. Well, let me pause the recording. We'll come back as soon as I get PyCharm up. So recording here. PyCharm came back up. If you have a project already open, go to File, Close Project. It should bring you to this screen. All right. We want to click on Get from VCS up here in the upper right. On the URL, we're going to copy and paste our GitHub project into there. Again, this is why it's important for you guys to put your initials at the end. That probably won't always save me, but it's close enough, right? The idea is if I check out everybody's project and they're all called Miniproject1, I have a big problem, right? So make sure you put your initials in there, hit clone, and then you can see it comes in there. So I'm going to just create a new one here called new.
So just to reiterate, we go to get from VCS, paste the URL, and then hit clone.
Yes.
It says that GitHub is not installed.
Okay.
Keep good.
All right. So while this is coming up here, you can see that it immediately pulls up the README for my project. Now, we're not really set up yet because down here on the lower right-hand side, when we check out in the interpreter, it's going to use your local computer's interpreter. So the first step you want to do after getting this up is go to Add New Interpreter and add Local Interpreter.
And where do we go for that?
Where? Down in the lower right.
Oh, on Python 3.9?
Yep.
Well, you're Python 3.9.
That's what I mean, is it's using the wrong interpreter.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to go down and click on Add New Interpreter, add Local Interpreter. It's going to come up. Add New, add Local. Come
Mine's
on.
310 and it's staying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It should be 311, which is what I would have, but it's not bringing up my local stuff.
Do we need to update Python?
PyCharm's acting a little flaky today.
Mine's not doing anything.
All right, so I'm going to go to File Settings. That's another way to edit this, by the way. Come down here to your project itself, which should be listed over here. Project, click on Project Python Interpreter. And then if you come up here and go Add Interpreter, Local, there we go. This is the screen you should get. All right, so we have virtual ENV environment over here on the left. We want to make sure that's selected. We want to make sure it's a new environment. And we want to make sure that this base interpreter is the one that you want. So in this case, 311.
As far as it's already at 311, do we have to go through this?
Yes.
process?
So the reason is right now it's using your actual Python for your machine, not a virtual environment of it. You want to make sure it's using that virtual environment.
Mine, let me try to, what's the fastest way to update Python? Because I'm only getting 310.
You have to just download Python 311, close out a PyCharm, reopen it, and it should come right back up. Okay, so I'm just going to hit OK, and you'll notice it's creating a virtual environment. And then from there, you can hit apply and okay. Down here in the bottom, you should see that it's now renamed to your mini project, right? So it's kind of hard to see up on those screens up there, but it says Python 3.11 Miniproject1 JZ new.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you like put two different computers like to the same GitHub repository?
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's
'Cause I-
Yeah, that's the whole point of GitHub is that you can share it across multiple people all working together. Yep. The key there is making sure that you always do your commit and push when you're working, right? So if you do 10 commits on your laptop and never push it, and then you do 10 commits on your desktop and push it, it's going to break things. It's not going to behave like you would expect it to. So always make sure you commit and push, which is what we're going to cover today. Okay. So again, you should get this at the bottom. You can always make sure that you're on the right virtual environment by clicking on terminal. And over here, you should see this VENV. All right. And if you go to Python packages, absolutely nothing should be installed except for pip, setup tools, and wheel. If you see other stuff here, you do not have a virtual environment set up correctly. All right. This is really, really important because this is where it trips people up when they're starting to play with virtual environments and stuff. You've got to make sure that you have a one created for your project and your project only.
So what if like we could install other packages in this virtual environment? Will that affect it or what?
No, you will want to for this particular project.
Okay.
But if you don't, if you just came in with that local interpreter I had earlier.
Yeah.
So let me go back to my 3.9 project, which it should change over here. PyCharm's acting a little funky on that. Let me just change it up here. So if I go back to 3.9, look at all these packages that are installed for that 3.9. It's way more than what's needed for this packet, this project, right? So you definitely want to make sure you're starting a clean slate. Now, is it going to affect you when you run your code? No. But when I check out your project and you have 40 packages that have nothing to do with your project in there, it takes me that long to create a new virtual environment and install all your stuff that you're never using.
Makes sense. Okay.
That may, you know what I mean? It doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's a huge deal. It also will break the version codes and stuff like that you're trying to. All right.
Okay, so where am I looking to see if I'm in the virtual environment?
The first one is to click on terminal and make sure it says VENV over here. If this is missing, then you're probably not in a virtual environment. You can also look down here in the lower right and make sure that it has your project name on that. Right. So mine says Miniproject1 JZ new. That's how I know this is the virtual environment for my project.
All right.
Last, go into your Python packages, make sure that you just have these three listed.
Perfect.
The first one, that's not going to seem like a big deal. By project 2 and 3, everybody started blowing stuff up last semester. So
God.
double check, triple check, make sure you're in the right thing.
Okay.
Okay. Once this is up and running, we're going to look at a couple files. So the first one that you see on the screen is the README. And this allows you to set up your README file. And we're going to talk about this more with your project. You also have the gitignore file. If I double click on that, you can see that this is going to get all the gitignore files for your particular section. Right? And what do these all mean? These are just making sure that you don't save unnecessary files to your Git repository. All right. The last thing we want to do at the bottom here is you see it says PyCharm. And there's a one here called the .idea/. We want to make sure we uncomment that out. We want to make sure it does not save all of your PyCharm settings to your GitHub repository.
Oh,
Right? You don't want all your config settings going up. We want to make sure we turn that on. So we put that, take that hashtag out of there, Control S to make sure we save it, and we're good to go. All right.
So if you were gonna add like a configuration file that had your API key and like you want it in the gitignore file, what would you do?
So you would then add that file in here. So say we had a file called .config.py, then that is added in here so that if it found it inside of our repository, it would ignore that file.
That's it.
That's it. Pretty simple. All right. You can also mandate this by going over here, clicking on the file, right click on it and say add to gitignore, and it would automatically do it for you.
oh, that's super handy.
All right. So for now, I'm just going to take this out because that's the way I'm going to show you on how to do that.
hack your mainframe, and then you can add a GitHub.
So here is .idea and a slash. We need to make sure that's in there. Okay. Other than that, let's go to our README file. And you can see when you first load up this README file that I can't edit anything. It's just showing it in view mode. Over here on the right-hand side, we want to click on editor and preview.
Uh-huh.
All right. Over here on the left side, you now have a hashtag, space, and then whatever your project name is. And over here on the right is what it looks like. This is called GitHub flavored Markdown. Okay, so Markdown is a templating language. That's what you can use to build really quick websites over here and stuff like that. This is basically a header side of it. That's why this is all in big capital letters. All right. If you go back to Blackboard, and in section 4, you're going to see one here that says GitHub README documentation. This is going to tell you how to write that syntax. All right. So a first level heading is a single $. Second is a double. Triple is a third. All right. Here's some other syntax. If you want to do bold, you need to write that inside of 2 asterisks. All right. Or 2 underscores. That also does that. If you want to italicize, it's a single asterisk. Strike through. You can see that here. Bold, etc. This tells you how to write that stuff. If you want to do it as a quote, you use these greater than symbols in front. It'll look like this. If you want to add code in here, you want to use the tick marks. All right. And you're going to use triple tick marks. So 1, 2, 3. Those tick marks on your keyboard is right above your tab key. It's the same as the tilde.
Oh, yep.
That makes sense? It's the same key as your tilde. Don't hold shift. All right. If you want to change colors and stuff, you can see the syntax for doing that. If you want to add links, you can see how to do that. There's a format for doing that. Section links, adding images, etc. All of that's in here. All right. You guys will need to reference this GitHub or flavor spec and all of that for your projects. So if you remember, if you go out to GitHub, right? I'm just going to show you a different project that I have out here. Let's look at SecGen, for example, right? So SecGen was an application that I contributed some code to that generates hackable virtual machines and stuff like that for cybersecurity training. If we click at their README file, we have this main header that goes across. Then we get this line break. We have a summary. This tells us what this project is. So we will need something like that in our project. So if we go back to our GitHub, we have our first banner. And if we wanted that line break, we would need to go see what a line break looks like. So if we scroll through here, we could find a line break. I don't remember where the line break is. Might be in advanced formatting. There you go, collapsible sections. And you can say what that line break is there. We're just going to go back out here to GitHub. And if we go to the README file, where's the README? README, there it is. We click on it. And over here, we look at the raw version of that. Does everybody see where I'm getting the raw? That is going to look like this.
Sorry, once more.
So here's our README file. We go back. Here's our main repository. We click on the README, MD. We click on raw, and this gives us our raw version of that README file. Okay. We want to copy something like this. So we could have a summary. So we're going to have JZ. We're going to have a tuple tag. See how it does a summary going in? All right. We would have something like description here. And for this description, we would go back to our project and it would be this, right? So we just literally copy and paste this out. This project will be using NumPy and Matplotlib in order to create 5 graphs that output as PNG files. We copy that in and we paste that right here where we have this description. So let me get this out of here. And we have this. All right. If you use this editor, you can edit on the left and immediately see it on the right. It's really handy. If you want to temporarily get rid of these project files, just click on project and that'll shift it so you can see both sides of this. All right. Did I lose anybody where we're at so far?
If you do like Control B for bold, it automatically puts in your,
The marks for it?
Mhm.
Yep.
that's cool.
Yep. Yeah, and sometimes it's nice to have a markdown plugin if you don't already have it. So if you go to File and Settings, and you go click on Plugins, and up here in the search, you type in Markdown, you will want to add this Markdown plugin. And that just helps you do this live view and all that stuff. So if you're not finding what I'm showing you here, or you want to be able to see it better, you can click on this Markdown, this first one here, and that will show it up.
These images in the markdown.
Yeah, that's another image one that'll basically write the wrapper for you to do that.
That's cool.
All right. So we wanted our name, our description of what's going through there. We would have install instructions for our project. So if we needed to pip install something, we would tell them to pip install. In your case, it's always going to be the same. It's going to be pip install instructions. Right? And then those instructions, you're going to have something that says, please run the following. Right? The colon, of course, make sure you spell this and grammatically and all that stuff correctly. And then we're going to use our 3 backticks, 1, 2, 3, right? And inside those 3 backticks, don't use Angular HTML. There we go. All right. In those 3 backticks, it's pip install -r requirements .text.
Pip install -r requirements.
Yep.
Which.
And then you can save that. And then once you get outside your 3 backticks, then it can go on with other information outside of there. So what is that telling us? That says in order to install all the requirements, we need to run that command in our terminal. And every time you look at a GitHub project, they're all going to have this kind of thing. So if I go out to this one here, which was the SecGen one, you'll see that it gives us information and introductory, and then there's an installation section. It says you got to have all this installed, and then it will tell you how to install those packages. This here, to make this look like code, it uses those 3 backticks that we used in that other one. All right. This tells you how to use your code or use your project. In this case, we have to run this specific command. If we put that in 3 backticks, then we can get that command to copy and paste it out. These are basically using GIFs, which are just, pictures that are all set up as a video in a way. And then you can tell them the options, etc. You guys won't need to get this detailed in your projects, but you do need to have your pip requirements and tell me how to install that.
Yeah.
Which means we need to generate our pip requirements file. So if we click on our project file over here on the left, that makes sure that we get this window back up and running. We go to our terminal, click on terminal at the bottom, and we're going to type pip freeze greater than requirements .text. See that? Press enter. And it's going to do that and create this requirements.txt in the upper left. We want to change that from red to green. So we click on requirements.txt, right click on it, go down to get, and click on add. Everybody see that?
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Okay.
So that basically adds it into our.
Repository. Yep. And that way, when we go to commit, which we're going to do here in a minute, it's going to send all those files up. If it's blue, that means you edited something that was already there.
Okay.
Blue means you edited. Green means it's a new file. Red means I'm not uploading that.
Okay.
Right. Just like I told you earlier, if you were to create a new file in here called new Python file, we called it .config and hit enter. Right. It'll ask if you want to add it to your GitHub. You say no, you hit cancel. Right. Because we don't want to add our config file up. If we right click on this one, go to Git, notice there's a add to Git ignore, and we click on the add Git ignore file. In which case, if we go to our Git ignore file, notice how that file immediately got added. All right.
Oh, so that ignores that specific file.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And then once it's ignored, you'll notice that it goes to this yellow code. Yeah.
Mine shows that it's not recognized.
Pip is not recognized.
Yeah.
You're probably not inside a virtual environment. Does it show up over here as Viv?
In your terminal.
No, but I do have it, like mini project down by the Python 3.11. Maybe I opened the terminal before I,
Yes, yes, you did. In which case you just click this plus sign right here. And that should get you a new tab, and then you can kill the old one. Yep, if that is a good point, because we ran into that last year. If for some reason you're not getting this Viv, but you have the mini project down here, you just need to click this plus sign, which will open a new terminal, and you should have this VNV on the side.
Cool.
All right, then close the old one, and you should be fine. Perfect. Thanks for bringing that up, because that was something we chased forever last year. Okay. So config, notice mine went back red because I removed it out of my git ignore, and we're going to go ahead and just delete that file because we're not actually using that.
Yeah.
Okay. So right now you should have a git ignore, a readme, and a requirements file. If we look in that requirements file, you'll notice nothing's in it right now, right? Because we didn't install anything at this point.
Did you do add imported packages to requirements? Does that automatically fill it with everything that you've imported into the project?
No.
Okay.
So what you want to do is anytime you pip install something, you have to go back and rerun pip freeze greater than requirements.txt.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Every single time you add the package, you need to go back and do that. Note that uninstalling packages isn't all that easy. You can't really do it with pip. The only way to do it is to come here and click on Python packages, click on the package, and tell it to uninstall by clicking the drop down. All right. So try not to, when you're first playing with a bunch of packages, make sure you wipe it out or create a whole new interpreter for your project and then do a pip freeze on it. That was a problem I had last year is people like were doing research and trying 10 different packages. That's fine, but you got to go delete everything or create a new environment because otherwise when I download your project and install, it has 20 different packages you never used. And again, every time you do that, it takes 10 minutes for it to install on my machine for every single student. When I had 8 students, not a big deal. This year with 30, it's a big deal.
Okay.
So, okay. Again, requirements is empty right now, no problem. Okay, so we need to do our first commit. Let's go up to Git. We're going to click on commit. Okay. At the top, you should have git ignore in blue, readme.md in blue, and our requirements.txt in green. All right. If you don't have that, then you're missing something all along the way.
And
Okay.
that's just saying that for this particular commit, requirements is a newly added file.
Yes. Yep. So in this case, it tells you right here, 1 added, 2 modified.
Yeah.
We need to make sure our commit message reflects whatever we're doing. So in this case, we're going to say add requirements.txt, and we're going to set up initial readme, something like that.
Did you hit commit to pull up this screen?
From the top part we did, yeah.
'Cause-
So you should be getting git and then commit,
yeah.
and that should pull up
Mine
this screen.
doesn't pop it out. It just pulls it out in
all
like
my files over there.
Is it,
Oh, you're doing, it has the little screen on the left.
it still has a commit message box on here.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, it looks very similar over there.
Oh, because it doesn't have commit message above it. It just has the checkbox.
As a matter of fact, my screen even says we have a new non-modal commit interface. I don't want that. I like this
Oh,
version of
okay.
it. So you can change this commit from a tool window, and a view diff is different. You can switch that around.
Okay. No,
All right. If down here at the bottom, it's going to show you the changes between the two. So we'll notice for this git ignore file that we changed this line 160. Does everybody see how we can see those changes before we even commit? If we click on readme, you can see all the changes we made. Notice how it highlights everything in green here that we added. And then requirements, in this case, there's nothing. It's just an empty file at this point. All right, from here, we want to make sure instead of clicking commit, we want to click the drop down and do a commit and push. Remember, it's advisable that you always commit and push.
Oh, yeah, because on the little modal one, it has commit, and then next to it, it just has the button.
Yes.
commit and push.
Right, right.
Okay.
Yeah, either one, but you want commit and push is what you're looking for. Okay. So when that pops up here, it's going to say, okay, we've made the commitment. Do we want to push? We click on push. Look and watch down here in the lower right-hand corner. You should see pushing, and then you may have to log into your GitHub if it's been a while since you logged in. So go ahead and just log in, authorize. Once it's authorized, you guys can go ahead and kick it, go back to here, and you can see that I pushed one commit to origin main. Everybody see that?
Mhm.
Okay. For that, if we go back out to our GitHub and we go to our mini project that we had out here, I should have Miniproject1. You should see in a refresh the stuff that I have in here that is not here in this project. Oh, you know why? Why is that? Stand by. It did it. It just did it to the wrong thing. Hold on. Your guys' should be okay. Mine's probably messed up. There we go. Okay. So you should see a couple things. One, it's going to show you what your comments were on the last time this updated, right? It's going to tell you how long ago it was, and you're going to notice your README file looks a whole lot better over here. Okay.
Okay.
You guys will keep adding to this README file. So you should have something like your initial comments in this, AKA if we go back here and open up our README, we should have something like before the descriptions, we'd have something like 2 colons, INF601, advanced programming in Python or with Python. And then you should have 2 lines. It's exactly the same thing that's in the deal here. So let's go back. Learning modules. So you have the name, your name, and then the mini project number. So we go back here. And this would be something like Jason Zeller because it's me. And then you could have 2 more and have something that is your mini project, which we already have up here. Right. I don't particularly care how you format this up at the top. We just need to have it nice and clean as it goes through there. Does that all make sense? So you may not want to make those as a single subheader like that. You may just have this as text for these 3 lines.
Okay, that makes sense.
So it looks something like this, and you have your mini project, etc. in there. Anybody have any questions on that? The idea is that you need to make your readmes nice and clean.
Mhm.
Okay. So now that we have our structure all set up for our mini project, let's go ahead and take a look at the mini project and see what we got. So again, we'll keep looking at these requirements. The first one is initial comments with your name, class, and project at the top of your Python file. Well, we obviously need a Python file, right? So let's right click on our folder up here, new Python file, and we can call this whatever we want. So in this case, we could call it main, right? Just main.py. Okay, that we are going to add to our project. So let's click on add. And then at the top of this, we need to have those comments that we always have at the top of all of our Python files. So you just come back up here, copy and paste this in. Super simple.
I know this is probably a really stupid question, but what's the way to add, just to quickly add a file?
Right click here, new, and then Python file.
Yeah, okay. Got it.
Cool. Then we have this at the top. And again, obviously adjust this to where it's your name. Don't put my name in there. And then we can start working on our project. So let's go in here. We'll again double check on our project. I know I'm bouncing around a lot. That's the reason I recorded it, so you guys could see how to set up your initial projects. All right. The next 5 points, and again, just like you did in Python 360, I would go ahead and copy this whole thing into your project file and just comment it out at the beginning. right? So you know what all your requirements are before you start. All right. So the first one we did, that simple initial comments. Second one, proper import of packages. All that means is that you guys are using, say, NumPy, right? What is the import for NumPy? Does anybody remember from last week?
Stall number? I guess.
The import.
Oh,
You're right. Pip install NumPy gets a package
is that
installed.
import NumPy as NP?
Yes. So for NumPy, it's import NumPy as NP. If we're using matplotlib, does anybody remember that one? If you did, you really paid attention because I don't remember it.
Yeah, the map.
It's import matplotlib plot something as PT, right? If I remember right. We're gonna do all that here in just a second, so it doesn't really matter. All right. The idea is that you have to have the proper import of those packages. So the next 20 points of this project is using an API of your choice, why finance works. Collect the closing price of 5 of your favorite stock tickers for the last 10 trading days. All right, let's tackle that, right? Because that's a good place to start. So we're going to use Y Finance. So let's go to terminal. We're going to pip install Y Finance. Okay. That's going to install some packages, including NumPy.
So when we install packages, we need to recursively go back through, or well, we can just look at the packages that we've installed.
It has its dependencies and all that. We don't have to list anything because the idea is now once it finishes installing this, let's make sure it does it here.
So for like in our requirements file, we would just have to put Y Finance.
We don't put anything in requirements file. It makes it for us. That's what I was going to show you here as soon as it's installed. Okay, so now I have everything installed. I need to rerun my pip freeze requirements, right? Because I installed a new package. So I hit enter on that. It takes a little bit to do its thing. And now if I go up to my requirements.txt, you'll notice that I have a bunch of packages installed now.
So pip freeze. And that's greater than one.
Yep. Okay, so now that I have Y Finance up, we should probably go out and take a look at what Y Finance is, right? So let's look at Y Finance. And we will find the pip package for this. Again, this is the overall Python repository for these kind of projects. It's a great way to look at it. I'm going to go ahead and link this here for the one in the class. Let me just add another web link. So I went ahead and linked out to it so you guys don't have to chase it down. So Y Finance will help us download market data using Yahoo Finance's API. Okay, so let's take a look at this. And this first one we want to deal with is the ticker module. So let's take these lines and let's just look at this first one here. Okay, so we're going to copy these lines into our main.py and just get us started.
Do we have to request for another API key here? Or?
No, there's actually no API keys for this one. It's just you're using that package from them.
So this one doesn't have an API key. Like, is there any particular reason for the need of an API key?
Yeah, so if they're trying to throttle how many requests you have, they do an API key so they can track back to your API key at this many requests.
But Yahoo Finance is like, yeah, we don't care.
They don't
Whatever
care.
you want.
Yep, exactly.
And that's MSF.
MSFT. Yeah, they just, so what they did here was we imported the Y Finance package as YF because that's the way they like to do their imports. We're going to move that up here to the top of our project. If you guys remember in 360, imports always go to the top. And then we're going to set up a variable name called MSFT equal to the YF.ticker. We're going to use the ticker module, and we need to pass in the ticker for that particular stock. Now, MSFT is Microsoft's ticker. right? If you guys need to figure out what those tickers are, you guys can come out here and you could do a Yahoo Finance, right? And you can go to finance.yahoo and you could do their symbol lookup, which is over here on the right-hand side, or a quote lookup. And so this is one way you could look it up. So what's another stock you guys like?
Yeah.
Apple, right? So let's look at Apple. Apple has a ticker of AAPL.
Oh, so the ticket was the name.
Yep.
Okay.
So we would want to store that inside of our thing. And we'll just put AAPL here for the time being. Let's put a comment in front of that so we could say that's Apple. So Apple is AAPL. Right? And we can do something like Microsoft is MSFT. And so you can go look up a bunch of those. For right now, we're just going to use Microsoft as this example. And then down here where it says get all stock info, which is part of the stuff that we copied out, we're going to say stock equals this MSFT dot info. Everybody get that? And that would store that kind of information and everything else about that particular one. In this case, we could do stock equals that, or we could just print this for the time being. So let's just do a print msft.info. Okay. Make sure you got your brackets in there. And then to run this file, you would need to come up here and you could hit run main.py, or I always recommend the first time you do it to right click on your main up here and go to run main. What that does is create a configuration for you to actually run this file.
Okay.
All right.
So key and then print.
Does everybody see where we're at here?
Oh, we're just printing all the time. Okay.
Yeah, we're just going to print everything that comes back out of info. And if you notice, you'll get this massive dictionary with a bunch of data in it. So let's go ahead and just import pretty print so we can see it nicely. And then down here, let's do a pretty print so we can see it. We'll rerun it. And now we'll get all this information about Microsoft. And notice there's a ton of information that comes back about Microsoft, right? Including the address of it, the average volume, bid size, where it's currently at, all the company's officers, how old they are. You get a bunch of information going all the way down.
And that's pprint.pprint.
Yeah, just pretty print, because we had a dictionary and it's easier to use pretty print to see that.
So every time right click on main.py and then go to run, or
You could do that once you set it up the first time. Notice how it has run up here. Now you can just click the run up here at the top.
No, it's the age.
Okay. So info is going to get us back all the information about this. If we go back here to our project, we specifically want to get the closing price of 5 of your favorite stocks for the last 10 trading days. So we're going to need to adjust some things that we're going to be doing with Y Finance. So one, if we come back here, we can get historical market data. That sounds kind of like what we want to do. And we want to get that for a period of 1 month or whatever we type in there. We are probably going to want something like what? 10 days, right? So we have no idea what kind of things we need to plug in there. So the best way to get this information is to go out to the real repository. So we click on homepage. Okay. Homepage will take us out to the Y Finance one, which will allow us to get this, and then we could find it in deeper detail as to what we need to
And
do.
that's in the README.
This is all in the README. Yep. So in our case, what we want to do is get the period of what's coming down. So if we grab this line here, let's grab both of these lines. Okay. So we're going to copy and paste that in. So instead of info, we want to get the history. So HIST equals Microsoft.history for a period of 1 month. Instead of 1 month, let's put in 10, indicating 10 days.
Okay.
Okay. Now we'll print our history out. So let's do a pretty print for history. Hist. And let's see what comes back out of there. All right, so it looks weird because it didn't really print it out like we would expect it to, right? It's because this comes back as a pandas data frame and some other stuff. And we'll talk about that here next week. That's actually a next week topic. But all we care about is we can get this information back and we can send the highs and the lows. So out of what came out of HIST, I could look back for each individual date and see what came out of each one. So if I look at HIST and I just print HIST in general, print HIST instead of using pretty print. Let's see what that output looks like. And there again, we're going to get this weird pandas frame coming out of there.
Oh,
Right. So that will give us back some data that comes in there. If we look back here, we can get share count, financials, holders, earning dates, options, the whole stock chain, multiple tickers, some logging, all sorts of stuff that we can get out of here, right? And this will give us back our pandas frame and everything else we want to do. But we got all of that out of here. So we still need to figure out what we're getting so that we can store the last 10 days out of here. Well, we'll also notice I just got 1 day out of here. I didn't get 10, right?
indeed.
So let's put 10D in there. I don't know. Hey, what do you know? We got 10 days.
Victory.
Okay. Now, of that, it gave us all that information, but we need to figure out how we're going to store that and print that, right?
Okay.
Because the whole project here was to grab the last close of the last 5 of your favorite stocks, last 10 trading days, store this information in a list that will end up converting to an ND array in NumPy. So how could we get this information out? So we have our history of our last 10 days. Let's make sure we got 10 days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. That is the last 10 trading days, which I actually need to update this homework to make sure that we're getting that last 10 trading days. So that's good. There's a difference there because if you notice, we have the 12th, 11th, and the day before that was the 8th, right?
On weekend.
Don't get trading on weekends, right? So we only get Monday through Friday and we don't include the holidays either. All right. So if I wanted to get the last, what was the project? Closing price, right?
Yeah, because I didn't see that.
So here, our closing price, we have our open, our high, and we're missing that data that would be closing.
It does say that there's 10 columns or
10 rows,
7
right?
columns.
7 columns. So we're missing what those other 7 columns
Yeah.
are in this data frame. So we went and do and find out what those other ones are. HIST, and then if we do a square bracket, let's do something like closing. Or better yet, I'm trying to remember how this was all stored in here. So for price, I don't know, I'm just making stuff up. For price in HIST, and we specifically want closing. Let's print price and see if that actually gets us back what we want. All right, let's run that. Okay, so no key, new error called, there's nothing called closing, right? So we need to figure out what keys are actually
Try
coming back.
close because open is just the word open.
There you go. Let's try close. There we go. Now we tried, well, I did print a print. Don't do that. Print a price.
I use the print to print the print.
Okay, so there's our closing price. All right. So that grabbed the last 10 days, and we specifically wanted the header out of that called close.
Okay.
All right. So we should probably add that to our list of some sort, right?
Yeah.
So let's add that to closing. And let's do an underscore MSFT equals an empty list. And then for down here, we're going to say closing MSF dot append, right? We're just going to add it to it. And we're going to add our price to each one of these.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so here, let's do some comments along the way so we know what we're doing. Create empty closing list for MSFT. And then here, loop through closing prices and add to list. All right, I know it seems simple, but the more you document now, it's going to be really important in the projects you do in this
So
class.
you could maybe put like you create a list of all of your tickers, then create two nested for loops, one that goes through your tickers and then through each of them well.
You're close, but yes, you could do that. It turns out you could do it that way, or it turns out Y Finance allows you to actually research multiple tickers at once.
Oh, let's go.
So you could use what's called multiple tickers, and then you pass in a string of the tickers, and then it would return each one back for you,
Oh my gosh, okay.
right? Which is nice because then we can pull back the different information we wanted for each one.
Okay.
In this case, you could do this, or you could use the other one. I don't care, as long as you can keep yourself organized as to how you're going through. Does that make sense? So for here, we're going to be saying Microsoft, right? And let's just keep all this code together. And because this is all code together, right? We're probably going to need to do this for every single one of these tickers. What does that mean we should probably use? If we're doing code over and over, closer.
No.
A what?
I said function.
Function, right? So let's write a function, def get closing. We need to pass in a ticker to this user, right? So let's just call it ticker. And then we would execute this code. So we would say, instead of MSFT, let's call this stock. Let's move this up here, X here, there. Instead of MSFT, we're going to call this our ticker. Okay. From there, we're going to go ahead and get all our history and do all this. So X here, B, this is now stock instead of Microsoft. In other words, we're using this same code over and over. Let's make it more generic. So let's pull this in.
Indent is only section 1.
Yeah.
That
To change your indents at the very bottom down here, you should see 4 spaces. Make sure you change that to whatever you need.
Yep. What's this?
All right.
And do I need to is there a way to go through and just format my file without having to do that?
The whole thing.
Yeah.
If you highlight the whole thing and then hit 4 spaces, it should correct it, I believe. So here, we're just going to call this our closing list, right? We'll set our list. Let's do this. And then we can do this where we actually add each one of these in. Now, there's advanced code for us to be able to do this in one-liners. Let's right now keep to the basics, make it simple, right? So we have our hist that's coming back with our closing history. This will be our closing list. So what we called it, yeah, closing list. And we append that price in. The idea is when we're done with this, we return that list back, right? So we return closing list. And now in our main outside program, we're going to call this one, say MSFT equals get closing. Then we pass in the ticker that we want, MSFT. That brings back Microsoft as a list. And we can check this by just simply printing MSFT. And let's run this code after we change this around a little bit. All right. So if all goes well, we should get this where we have a list of each one of these. And they go out. Now, this is a little bit hard, right? I mean, we don't deal in millions of fractions of a penny. What do we normally deal with when we're dealing with money?
Hundreds of dollars.
Right. So what we could do is we could take that price and we could use the round function to round that to 2 decimal places. So we would use round price, comma 2, and that would actually take that price, round it to 2 decimal places and append that up.
Yeah.
So if we go ahead and rerun our project here, Now we have our prices down to just 2 pennies and they're rounded to the nearest cent.
Oh, that's very good.
Cool. Remember, you should always have 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Great. And as long as you say period 10 here, it's always going to grab the last 10 days. All right. We don't have to do calculations of what is today. Let's go back 10 days. We don't have to do any of that. If you look in last year's video, I think I make you do that. So you don't need to, right?
Yeah.
It's built into the function, so we don't need to do that. Okay, so we have those 10 prices. Let's go back and look at our homework assignment. Store this information in a list that you'll convert into an ND array. We did that. So the only thing we need to do now is go find 5 other stocks, right? That all makes sense? All right. So let's go grab 5 more stocks. So like you said, let's just create a list of all the stocks that we actually want to play with. So down here, let's do something like stocks equals, we'll create a list that starts with, say, Microsoft. You had Apple earlier, right? So AAPL. What else do we want to chase?
That was really.
Trying to make money like I did? All right, GameStop.
That was GME.
GameStop is GME.
I don't know what my. No.
Me too. Right there along with AMC theaters or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Anybody else got another stock?
Sony.
Sony. All right, let's go out here to Sony.
I don't know.
What is funny?
And there's Sony, so it is just Sony.
I-
You get lucky with that one.
One that continually loses money, like there's never a net positive with it.
Oh, we can pull up my portfolio and we can find all sorts of them.
Okay, cool.
If it was still around, I'd say Sears.
Which one?
Sears.
Mhm.
Funny company. Oh, you know what? Pull up Baseline.
Sears Canada's still around.
You know what?
It's still on there.
Let's keep it alive. Oh,
Yeah.
it's 0.
It's not doing so well.
Base plan's down to like 0.23.
Are they even?
They're getting ready to delist them. which
So
is
call it
very
something
funny.
like Facebook, right? Which is what, Meta now, something like
Yeah.
that.
Which,
Yeah.
or you can do BBBY. I
That
don't
one
know if
sounds
that's
familiar.
around anymore. You can try it.
What is that?
Bed Bath and Beyond. I don't know if it's around anymore.
I used to do a bunch of those and stuff. Anyway, all right, so you picked 5. I don't care what companies, you guys will end up picking 5, right? We're gonna set that as a list for stocks. And then the idea is that we're gonna have each one of these come back, and so we would do a for loop, right? We could just for loop, send this ticker to get closing, get our results back. We add our results back in so that we can pull it out and do stuff with it. So now what we would want to do is get each one of these back in as a list, and we need to create that as a NumPy array. Does anybody remember how to do the NumPy arrays?
No.
All right, that's what documentation's for, right? So